Hello, friends. I'm Kush Khandelwal, and this is Ageless Athlete. A few years ago, I started asking questions that would not leave me alone. Why do some people keep pushing mentally, physically, spiritually long after others burn out or break down? What does it really mean to age well when you still crave movement, meaning, and mastery? This show is my search for answers. Each week, I talk to elite athletes, everyday adventurers, and pioneering researchers who are stretching the limits of what's possible across age, injury, illness, and self doubt. You will hear hard won lessons, untold stories, and science backed strategies for building a body and mindset that lasts. For those of us joining for the first time, welcome to the show. For the rest, thank you for joining us again. Time is our most valuable asset, and I deeply appreciate you giving me your time today.
Imagine standing on a sea cliff in North Wales, wind tearing at your clothes, gulls wheeling overhead. Below you, waves slam against jagged rock. Above, the crux move of a climb so serious, so sparsely protected that few would dare attempt it. This climb carries high risk. It could likely kill you. This route is called the Bells. And the man climbing it, he is 74 years old. Rob Matheson is a name whispered with reverence in British climbing. He has been climbing since 1957. He learned from his father, passed on to his son, and has spent nearly 70 years seeking boldness. Not in the gym, but on raw, committing traditional routes where real consequences exist. This conversation begins with Rob's recent remarkable ascent of the Bells, a legendary climb first done in 1980 that launched an era of dangerous, visionary climbing in the UK. But this episode is about for more than one route. It's about legacy, about risk, about pressure, and identity. We talk about what it means to climb at 74, not just physically, but emotionally, about how your body stops talking to you with age, and how you learn to listen differently, about balancing a full career, family, and adventure, about pub fights, mentorship, and why we still seek challenge when we have nothing left to prove. Now, fair warning, the first few minutes get technical. We talk about E grades, a British system for rating the difficulty and seriousness of climbs. But stay with us because what comes next is rich, vulnerable, and I believe wildly inspiring. Whether you are a climber or just someone trying to keep evolving with age, I think you will enjoy this conversation. So settle in. Rob Matheson is about to show us what boldness really looks like. Have you had a chance to visit these parks?
No, I haven't had a chance to visit. I've heard a lot about it, but mainly through skiing. It's supposed to be wonderful powder up there.
Yes,
Um,
funny. You've heard about its skiing reputation ahead of Indian Creek and some of the famous climbing areas around.
yeah, I mean, the only climbing area I've been to in the States was Yosemite back in '75.
Of course,
Yeah,
yeah,
back in
right,
the day.
rightly so, rightly
Yeah.
so. Amazing. Well, I can't wait to dive a little deeper into some of the climbs and the history and maybe some of the travels as well.
Yes, you've got to remember, I'm not famous like some of the other people that you've had on. You know, I'm just an ordinary person who has sampled a lot of sports and kept very fit throughout my life. So it's not just climbing.
Indeed, indeed, Rob. And it's interesting. Well, a lot of people know about you now, but climbing is a funny sport, with the exception of maybe one or two people. There isn't really anybody outside the world of climbing that is known in popular media. I mean, within the world of climbing, yes, we worship our heroes.
Yeah, yeah,
Then you
yeah.
go back to the general public and nobody. So one other thing about, like, I try to create this show to inspire the everyday person, the everyday athlete. So maybe I might ask you to explain a couple of technical terms. So yeah, just
Yeah, you'll have to keep prompting me because
okay.
as you know, as you get older, your memory starts to get a bit puddled. So so
Well,
and you lose your track of thought and stuff like that. So I'm happy for you to butt in at any time and prompt me.
okay.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I always like to start with this question, Rob, which is, where are you right now, and what did you have for breakfast this morning?
Right. Where am I right now in terms of climbing?
No, just physically. Where are you located?
Physically, I'm pretty good because I'm not injured. I have the usual moans and groans, the hips, the knees, because they've had a lot of stress over the years, and I exercise those every morning. I haven't got any finger injuries. People say that's because I don't pull hard enough. And I've got no arm injuries, no shoulder injuries. My lungs and chest and my heart's good. My blood pressure is on the low side of normal. And for breakfast, I had scrambled egg on toast to up my protein levels because I am very much aware that muscle wastage requires
Mm,
protein. And so for the last, I would say, 2 years, I've been particularly aware of that. And my lovely wife has maintained my high protein diet.
very nice, Rob. And where are we recording this from? Are you at your home?
I'm at my home in the northwest of England on the southern edge of the Lake District, overlooking Morecambe Bay, which is a big bite of a bay outside the west side of the UK, opposite the Isle of Man. So when I look out the window, I can see right over Morecambe Bay to Blackpool and beyond. So I've got a good view out the window.
Sounds like a lovely place to be. And I don't know
When the
enough
wind's
about.
not blowing.
Oh, when the winds. Yes, I have heard of the fearsome wind, or should I say gales, that blow through that
Yes,
part of the country.
yes. We get a lot of high winds, usually the prevailing southwesterlies.
And this is springtime. So is this the windy season, or when do you feel the wrath of the wind the worst?
You can never predict it. It's very variable in the UK, as you probably have heard of. But we've had an incredible spring. We've hardly had any rain at all. It's been absolutely fantastic. So a lot of trad climbing is getting done in the mountains in the UK this year, which is great.
Amazing. Well, I'm not sure to what one can think for the spell of good weather. Rob, I want to start right with at the top, and this climb that's had the climbing world buzzing. So you just repeated the bells at 74. And from what I know, it is one of the most iconic and intimidating track climbs in the UK. And not just because of its difficulty. I believe it was first climbed a while ago, uh, almost 5 decades ago, and it was credited as England's first E7. And I think it paved the way for an era of very bold and scary routes. So before we go deeper, I would like, I would love your help with something. So, because even experienced climbers can, outside the UK, can struggle to wrap their heads around the British grading system. I've been climbing for over 2 decades, and yeah, I tend to forget. So, for listeners who might not know, what does E7 6B actually mean?
Right, the E grades go from E1 and it's open ended, and at the moment it goes up to E11, say, or E12. And each grade is a subjective judgment of the person who does the climb. So that when you do a first ascent, you say, oh, that's probably an E3. And you give it what's called an English technical grade to give some substance to how hard the climbing is, because the E grade is the overall physical and mental grade. So, for instance, you could have an E7 like the bells that is, let's say, English 6B. And that means that it's not too difficult, but because it's E7, it means that it's not going to be a lot of protection. So you could get an E7 6C, which is one grade harder technically, but E7 it's likely to be better protected. So the E grade and the technical grade tell a story of what that is like to climb in terms of mentally and physically, if you understand what I mean. And you
I
get used
think
to using it.
yes, I think I follow. The E part of the grade denotes the difficulty of, or the risk factor, difficulty of placing protection, and the risk factor. In America, we are simple people. We just add this RX to a climb, and we
Yeah,
say, you know what, this is, do it
yeah,
only if you feel bold. And the number and the letter after that denotes
yeah.
the physical difficulty of the climb, right? So
The
in this
number after
case,
is the technical difficulty. It's
correct,
usually
correct.
the technical difficulty, how hard it is to work out the move. It's called the technical grade. And the E grade is the overall grade. I mean, it came out of extremely severe, which was an old English grade, just extremely severe. And then there was easy extreme, medium extreme, and hard extreme. So there was always E1, E2, E3. And then we just opened it up to become open-ended. So it's gone E3, E4, E5 through the 70s and into the 80s, E6, E7. And then there's been, with the modern climbers that have been very powerful, but not perhaps a good mind, all of a sudden they seem to jump up from E7 up to E9. E8 got missed out a little bit here, in my opinion. And then we're up at E10 and E11 and maybe
Yes,
E12. So, yeah, it's the judgment grades. Yeah.
because yes, because if one was to just follow that linear train of thought, one would think
Yeah.
that maybe if E1 is very safe. I've been thinking a lot about energy, not just in training, but in recovery, in focus, in how we age. So when I came across NutriSense, it hit home. It's a program that pairs a 24 by 7 glucose biosensor with a dedicated dietitian to help you understand how your body responds to food, stress, sleep, and movement, and then act on the data. I chose it because I wanted something real, not another hack or one size fits all plan, just honest insight into what's actually going on inside me and how to build habits that last. NutriSense has helped over 150,000 people take that step. And if you want to try it, you can get 33% off your first month with code AGELESS15 at nutrisense.io. Again, that's nutrisense.io, code AGELESS15. You can also find this information on the show notes for this episode.
No,
Then
E1 could be E1 4C technically, which means that it's not very safe, but not very hard. And the reason it's got the E grade is because if you fall off, you could hurt yourself.
Okay, let's zero in on the bells of bells, the climb that you just did. What does, in terms of both uh, technical challenge as well as the risk, what does E76B maybe? How would you explain it to like an everyday person?
Okay, the climbing is probably because everybody knows French grades, sport climbing grades. The climbing is probably 7A plus stroke 7B. But if you fall off, in some places you could die. If you fall off in other places, you wouldn't die because you might have a sky hook next to you or something like that. But the protection on that E7, even though it's only French 7A, 7A plus, the protection is very marginal, and it takes a protection expert who's developed that over many years to protect it so that it becomes safer.
Thank you. So I found this quote from this person, Mike Owen, who made the third ascent. I think it
Mike
came from
Owen, yeah.
it came from the Gogart guidebook, I think back from 1990. And I'm just going to
Yes.
read this quote out. And the quote says,
Okay.
"A foothold crumbled near the top, and I was looking at a ground fall. I thought I was going to die. So scary. The most I have ever been, but well worth it." Okay, so Rob, I would love to hear from you now. What drew you to this particular route with such clear real hazard? And what made you want to accomplish it?
I knew that I wouldn't be able to on-site it. It would be too hard for me at my age. Back in the day, in the early 80s, I may have been able to on-site it because I was doing a lot of on-siting then, but I never even thought about doing it. It had such an awesome reputation after John Red had done it in 1980. Nobody dared go near it except the world-class top climbers like Andy Pollitt, who 6 years after the first ascent, I think it was 86, Andy Pollitt on-sited it. And he had the experience of his life. And people who knew him knew that experience on the Bells had almost changed his life. And even later in life, he always referred back to the bells to say that it was probably the closest he'd been to death in his climbing career. But as you probably know, there's a massive difference between on-site and head point. So I knew I was going to head point this route. But first of all, I just went down on my own one afternoon, travelled down from the Lake District, 4 hours down the motorway, threw the rope down and had a look at it to see if there was any protection, to see if it was a goer in my mind. And first time I went down, it certainly wasn't. There was no way I would go on that, full stop. And then it eats away at you. So a couple of weeks later, I goes down again. And I had a good look with more open eyes. And I thought that I could get a lot of what I call retreat protection in. So I was always going to have something within a couple of meters that if I got into trouble, I would be able to lower off. Not fall off, but I could lower off. So I broke it down in that way. And then it got complicated because I didn't want to do it with the sling on the peg. I wanted a naked peg, nothing on it, because obviously you reduce the grade if you have something hanging on a peg. So I didn't want anything hanging on the peg, and that made things harder because I was going to have to do the crux with very, very bad protection. And if I failed to get the peg, I was in trouble. So it took a few weeks more to sort that out. So I broke it down in stages. And when you're trad climbing, you just look at the rock in front of you. You don't think about what's coming ahead and might go in foothold crumbling near the top of the crag. Otherwise, mentally you wouldn't cope. So if you concentrate on the few feet in front of you, you can break down anything. And that's what I did.
Amazing, Rob. Well, before I forget, I want to point listeners to your YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Where you have a couple of beautiful, detailed videos.
Yes, correct.
Breaking down the protection on this route.
Yeah.
And yes,
I did that by popular demand. Actually, I wasn't going to.
Did you really?
I wasn't going to do that, but a lot of climbers I was talking to said, "Bloody hell, you're mental at your age going to do something like that. What's going on in your head? How have you broken this down?" And I said, "Well, I'm not telling you." And then I thought, well, why shouldn't I tell people? Because, I'm trying to drive trad climbing again, trying to, a bit of a renaissance perhaps of trad climbing, get people interested in taking risk, because people are good at watching risk and they love watching risk and jeopardy, but they don't like doing it themselves, do they? And so I'm trying to get people out of the gyms, right, out into the open air and have a go at trad climbing, because it'll get more into the soul. Anyway, that's a diversion. So yes, on the YouTube channel.
Sure. And did you make those videos before or after you did the climb?
Oh, everything was before.
Okay.
I laid my cards on the table.
Okay.
Totally before I did the route, and that put a lot of pressure on me.
And Rob, so you made those videos to clarify to people that you did not just have a death wish, that you were quite calculated and planned with this climb that you were attempting. And for listeners who are not so familiar again with the grades, I think that difficulty wise, you mentioned this is somewhere in the 7A, 7B spectrum, which in American Yosemite grades equates to, let's say, a 12A or 12B. You have also spoken that this was also near your physical limit of
On,
climbing.
yeah, certainly at my on-site,
You're on site.
certainly on my on-site limit.
Sure, sure.
Um,
It's close to your on-site limit, but the difference is, so for example, let's say currently that is also my on-site limit, 12
yeah,
XLB, right? But I can do that, and I won't always do that, but I will do that when I know that there are these, you know, uh, shiny, strong metal quick draws both
yeah,
above me and below me. But
yeah,
the landscape just changes completely when you don't have that, that kind of protection, right?
yeah.
You are doing something, and like you said yourself, so
But I'm used to that. That's me. I'm used to that because I'm not a sport climber. I can sport climb, but it doesn't give me the satisfaction that trad climbing does. So I am used to being in a risk situation, whereas a lot of climbers aren't used to being in a risk situation. So for me, it's not such uh, a big deal of climbing 7A plus 7B without any protection, or with protection that isn't a shiny bolt, because I'm used to the marginal protection that I use. So
sure.
it's horses for courses. That's me in my comfort zone. Listen, I'm not saying I was in my comfort zone when I was doing it, because I didn't give the bells the reputation it's got.
Hmm.
Somebody else has given it that reputation. Climbers over the decades have given it that reputation, and not me. I haven't come out and said that this is a death route.
Fair. Okay, so I want to also understand this though. Yes, this climb is renowned for its again its history and its fearsome location, fearsome reputation. But I think it is not just that; it is also the setting and the climb itself. And I think that yes, as climbers, we attracted to grades and reputation, no doubt. But also the climb itself should be alluring. Like if the same climb was maybe in some dank quarry somewhere, it would not maybe be as appealing. So uh, take us to the climb itself, Rob. What makes this climb such an engaging prize?
It's on a special sea cliff which is called Craig Gogarth in Wales, and it's very hard white crystalline quartzite rock, which is quite brittle and flaky, so that all of the climbing on it is in your face. You're not getting great big jugs and not many ledges to stand on. Yeah, it's at you all the time. And this is a sheer white wall straight out the sea. And it's a very long, complex pitch. It's got two major traverses on it. And the route finding is really complex. And that's why it's such a difficult on-site proposition, because you could go up the wrong tree, you could go up the wrong avenue, the wrong series of holds. And if you do that, it could be curtains. And that's why it's got such an on-site reputation. So climbers who are climbing French 8A have got that reserve. Climber like me who's an 7B climber ain't got that reserve. So for me, I was climbing, as you said before, nearer my limit than the other top climbers that have done it.
Yes, I looked at the video and I looked at pictures of the climb, and yeah, blank face, the route finding looks devious indeed, and I think myself and maybe other climbers listening to the show, we have all been in situations over a lifetime where you can quest up like an expansive rock and run out of holes.
Yeah.
And sometimes you're lucky and the type of rock and the route affords retreat. On this one, when I was just looking at it, it just seemed like, wow, yeah, you could end up with like in some section and yeah, you would not be able to retreat. So your decision to head point, which is rehearse the climb a little bit before you took off to actually quote unquote red pointed, yeah, just just seems so sensible. Rob, talk to us a little bit about you mentioned earlier that you have been your all this experience in climbing routes of this style where you are doing these scary lines that are close to your physical limits. So talk to us about how that preparation took place, not just in the immediate uh, in the immediate time before the climb, but just your history of climbing. Like, what made you so prepared to be able to attempt? I think, in my mind, something pretty audacious in your 70s.
Well, I haven't climbed all my life. I had 8 years off climbing in the 80s. I started climbing in 1957 when I was 7 years old. Ever since then, I've been in the mountains and learning how to climb. Initially with my dad, and then my mum came along, so it was a family unit. And then as I grew older into a teenage years, I started going out with some mates. And by the time I was 18, I'd done all the hardest routes in the Lake District. And I'd done all the hardest routes in Wales as well, because we used to go down to Wales a lot. So I'd ticked all the routes off in the guidebook. And I felt then I had earned the right to do new routes, because I just felt, you've got to earn the right to do something special, and to put a new route up is special. So that's when I started doing new routes. And in 1969, I did my first new route, which was called Paladin in the Lake District, which was probably probably one of the first E3s in the Lake District. And then E3 at that time was quite hard. So I've just worked up through the grades and right through the 70s as well. And in 1983, I stopped climbing because I lost the motivation. So in 1983, I took up, started playing squash to a high standard. And I started windsurfing. And I went potholing, because potholing was easy to go to a high standard because it's only semi-skilled, in my opinion. And,
Wait a second. What is potholing, Rob?
potholing is going underground, squirming underground into. It's quite a big sport in the UK. Going through really tight squeezes, and in the UK, the hardest potholes were, say, 18 hours. They were 18 hours to get down to the bottom and back out again. And if something happened below the crux of it, curtains, they can't get you out. So it was really committing. So we did a lot of the hardest potholes in the country.
I'm sorry, that sounds horrible.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It
So
sounds the exact opposite of climbing big walls in the
yeah,
majestic open
yeah.
skies.
Yes, but at the end of the day, it's just the same because it's a challenge.
Friends, it means a lot that you're here. I pour a ton of heart into the show. The research, the interviews, the editing, it's all me, trying to share stories that matter. If Ageless Athlete has ever made you feel seen, inspired you, or just kept you company on a long drive, or better, over a run or a bike ride, I would be so grateful if you considered supporting it. Even a small amount helps keep it going, helps keep bringing the show to you for free. You can chip in at buymeacoffee.com/agelessathlete. Again, buymeacoffee.com/agelessathlete. You can find the link on the show notes as well. Thank you for listening and for being part of this.
So getting through a squeeze without getting stuck is a challenge in the same way as doing a hard move on a climb. So it's challenging. And I did a lot of skiing, and I started climbing again in 1990. 1990, after the climbing revolution. So I missed the 80s totally. And when I came back, I couldn't believe how strong climbers were. It was unbelievable. And people were training. Never trained in my life until 1990 when I came back. And when I retired in 2010, I became a full-time athlete and I could train every day. But then, of course, I got injured.
Sure,
Because I trained too hard.
Rob, I can't, yeah, fascinating. You left climbing, you came back and picked up all of these different sports, and then somehow climbing lured you in.
Yes.
And I want
it's
to
always
go,
in my blood.
yeah, exactly. So I want to, yeah, I love to say once a climber, like always a climber.
Yeah.
I want to go back into that a little bit, but I feel I do need to ask you about the day you sent the climb.
Yeah.
And talk to us about that morning, right? You have put in all of this preparation. You have gone and inspected the route. You have figured out like what type of gear goes where. You have head pointed, or you have not sorry, you have rehearsed the route. So you have put a top rope down and you have rehearsed the moves. And then before that, also you're bringing in all of this knowledge and this buildup over the decades, right?
Yeah.
And you are now standing on the ground. You have your gear on you, you're tied in. What is going through your mind, Rob, as you attempt to set out?
Well, you've got to remember that I went on the route at the end of March first to try and lead it, and I'd arranged for photographers to come down and videographers to come down and people to hold my rope, which was hard to get because a lot of people didn't want to hold my rope. Can't understand that really. The weather was really cold and really windy, but because I had to stop dancing around my handbag. I'd laid it all out on the table. I'd arranged all these people to come down. So I felt I had to go for it. So I went for it in really windy conditions. I was getting buffeted around on the crag and I was freezing. I was freezing. It was horrible weather. So I went for it then, just to get what it's like to get on the sharp end flavour. But I got a bit higher than I thought I would, and I managed just to get the sling over the peg. The wind was blowing the sling all over the place, and if I fell off then, I would have been in trouble. But I managed to get it over, and then I tried to make the crux move, but I fell off.
Goodness.
And an hour later, I had another go.
Hang on. So you fell off, and on this climb, I'm guessing there are different sections. Some sections are more dangerous than others. So this
Yeah.
particular place or this fall that you took was perhaps not as
Well,
bad.
no, it was the crux, but it I just managed to hang on to get the sling over the peg. I said I wasn't having a sling on the peg. So I was having to crank up higher to get the sling over the peg. And it took me about 3 goes to get it on over the peg. And I managed to get it over the peg. The photographers were shitting themselves. Craig, my son, was on the other side filming, and all he could hear was his heart going boom, 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 boom. And then, then I exploded off. I fell off. But it was safe to fall off then because I could push it then to try and do the crux move because I'd actually got a sling on the peg. Now, the peg's all right to fall on if you're underneath it because it's all rusted and knackered. And I had a sky hook as well, just a bit down to the side of me. So I fell probably about 30 feet, 40 feet.
Were you were above the peg, or were you actually below the peg?
I was below the peg. I'd reached up
Ah,
and I was moving across to it.
so it was almost like a top rope fall,
Almost, yeah.
but you still fell like 30 feet.
Yeah.
Oh, it was just like a dynamic belay, and your runners.
Yeah,
and other,
the second man was asleep.
Rob, I want to actually, I'm glad you mentioned the peg. I want to ask you about this for a second. So a peg is not quite a bolt, right? It is this thing that has been, into the crack. How old was this peg, by the way? That was
1997, I think this one was.
Okay. So there's this
cliff.
on a sea cliff. Exactly. So on a sea cliff, you have this little bit of metal which has been pounded in. And just to give listeners context, sea cliffs or climbing on sea cliffs. Okay, I'll take it. Protection on sea cliffs, bolts, etc., are more prone to wear and tear because of the brine, the salt in the air that breaks down metal. So bolts on sea cliffs in places like Thailand and Limnos, etc., they need to be replaced, or at least need to be replaced with stronger metal like titanium. Here you are climbing on this particular peg, this particular protection. It's not even a proper bolt, right? So why not have that be replaced? Like, why would you? I get the ethic around not adding bolts. Of course, you cannot add bolts, but why not replace this manky peg, which could claim somebody's life if it shattered and people got hurt?
Because I don't have the right to do that. I'm not a local climber. It's only the local climbers that have the right to do that. And sometimes if you try and get that peg out and you hit it a couple of times with a hammer, it'll snap like a carrot because it's half rusted through. I mean, you can only see what isn't rusted really on the outside, but in the crack it'll be rusted. So it was only half rusted through. So my judgment was that peg was okay to fall on as long as it wasn't through the eye, because it sticks out about 2 inches. So it's stick. That's why I could put that I could put a sling over the top of it because it's sticking out. And my judgment was that because it's only half rusted through, it was okay. That was my judgment. Now, if local climbers want to go and replace it, then that will snap when they're taking it out, and there isn't really another space for a peg to go in. So it's a judgment call for the local climbers.
I
But I
see.
was quite happy with it.
Fair. And no,
'Cause
and in your video, you describe in painstaking detail on just some of the physics with how you have to utilize that peg. Because yes, if you simply just hang something on the eyelet, it would be more prone
yeah,
to shattering.
yeah, increasing
you
the leverage. Yeah, you don't
increase
want
the
to
leverage.
increase the leverage. Yeah.
Okay, so maybe again a
But-
contrary question. So why
No, sorry,
would the local
sorry to interrupt. You said on the day that I actually led it, how did it feel
Yes.
at the bottom of the
Yes,
climb?
let's go into that. Let's go
Yeah.
into that. Yes.
Because I'd already failed on it, even though it was a stupid day to try it. It was very bad conditions. So all that my mates said, oh, that's all right, he'll make a better film. You know, having fallen off on it. Thanks very much. So how did I feel? I felt that this was the time to do it because it was a decent day and I wasn't injured. I felt okay. I felt fine. And you know what it's like when you're a climber. You get in the zone. So I was in the zone. I had me 32 runners that I was going to use on the climb, most of which aren't very good, as you can imagine. But a combination of all of the little, rubbish ones together sometimes, give you that secure feeling. So I set off up what's called the CAD, across the traverse to base camp, which is on the video. I got all the runners on base camp fine, then up to advanced base, that I call it in the video, and then to the crux. And before the crux, I started feeling really concerned because I thought, moments in time, this was a moment in time, and I had to get that peg hooked with the sling. And once I got that peg hooked, and my hands weren't frozen, and I wasn't being buffeted by the wind, it was a nice day. It just went fine.
Got it. And sounds like yes, that first try might have helped you get the heebie-jeebies out of the system, because like many climbers know, once you actually no, it doesn't matter how long you've been climbing, there's something about the act of falling that is still scary, right? And sometimes you have to kind of keep rehearsing and keep retraining your mind to be able to separate, let's say, objective risk versus not. So you had gotten that scary fall out of the way. At what point, Rob, did you feel that this climb was in the bag?
When I got past the crux and I was back into my comfort zone, which is on my feet, because the angle eases back slightly, so that my strength as a climber is not my physical strength, it's my footwork. Because footwork, I used to, when we started climbing, we used to climb in great big boots. So footwork precision has always been there. And You know, if I'm going to blow my own trumpet, I'm pretty good on my feet. So at that stage, I knew that if I was very careful and very considered, and above all, I said to myself, Cush, when I got past the crooks, I said, right, I'm going to bloody enjoy myself now. So I sort of sucked in some enjoyment of actually being out there in what they called the death zone after the peg, because I felt in control and I was enjoying the moment. And when I got to the top, you know, it was like,
Very nice.
just get in there, boy. Yeah. So, yes, I really enjoyed the top half.
And did really everything go perfectly per plan, or despite,
No,
yeah, were there any
no.
moments where you,
Yeah. There was moments that one of the reasons that I fell off the first time was because it took me 6.5 minutes hanging below the crooks to get the sling off, because it put it under
oh
several other
no,
slings and I couldn't get them off.
oh my
And
goodness.
then take the tape to tape the sky hooks on. I couldn't get off my leg because my fingers were frozen. All stuff like that, you know. There was loads of little things, but I mean, that's climbing, isn't it? It's never going to go perfect. But when I actually did the route, the send, as they would say in America, yes, everything went pretty well. Thank
And
you.
how did it feel, Rob? Like, you obviously had this long lifetime of climbing and achievements, but like, how did it feel on this particular moment when you got to the top and you knew you had done this climb?
It was very private, but I was proud of myself.
Okay.
I was proud of myself in a way that I'd never experienced before, because I'd laid my cards on the table and the media frenzy sort of took off before I even did the climb. And that mounted a fantastic amount of pressure on me. And it's not usual to do it that way around. Normally, you do it first and then you can do videos and stuff about preparation, you know, but I'd done it the other way around. So because I put all that pressure on myself, and because I was climbing at my limit, and because the Bells were such an iconic route, and everybody was saying, even if I didn't believe them, everybody was saying, bloody hell, that is amazing, that, doing that. And well, yeah, but I head pointed it. It wasn't an on-site. I head pointed it. I knew where all the holes were. And they said, well, that's what people do nowadays. So, yeah, it was crazy. But yes, to summarize that, yeah, it's funny saying that, but yeah, I was proud of myself.
Well, congratulations, Rob.
Cheers, mate. Thank you.
A proud achievement. You had mentioned how your footwork had been honed through early years because you had to
Yeah.
use these things called nailed boots. I think this is an excellent segue because I wanted to ask about your early years. You started climbing with your dad.
Hello, friends. Just a quick break. This is not an ad. If you have been enjoying these conversations, I would love for you to subscribe to my newsletter. It is where I go deeper, sharing stories, reflections, and behind the scenes insights that don't always make it into the podcast. I write about what I'm learning from elite athletes and how to stay ageless in body and mind. If you have ever wanted a thoughtful, inspiring read that ties it all together, training, aging, mindset, and awe. You will love this. You can find the link in the show notes or just head to www.agelessathlete.co. Again, www.agelessathlete.co, that is, to sign up. And yeah, just a couple of emails a month, and you can unsubscribe anytime. Absolutely no spam ever. Okay, back to the show.
Correct. Yeah.
You were just a kid and your gear was, yes, nail boots, maybe
No.
other things that should
Yeah. No.
that are probably in museums now.
I didn't have nail boots. I had big mountain boots, big rubber mountain boots. But initially, it was just what we called in the UK plimsolls, little
Mm.
white gym shoes. I wanted some nail boots, but they didn't have a size small enough for me. So it was only my dad that had the nailed boots.
Okay.
But quite frankly, nail boots are horrific things to climb in. I don't,
I
I don't
can't
know.
even
I
imagine.
can't imagine any intelligent person designing a climbing boot with metal studs on it. It doesn't make sense to me. And of course, the early climbers were the intelligentsia, weren't they? They were the ones from university.
Correct. Correct.
And not only that, Kush, they were so intelligent that when they went climbing, they used to tie themselves together so that if one fell off, they all fell off. I mean, where,
That's
where's
right.
the sense in that?
That's right.
Anyway,
That's
there
right.
we
No,
go.
absolutely. Yes, I'm conjuring up that visual in my head, back in the day of like these humans daisy chaining themselves
Yeah,
on the side of a cliff.
yeah,
For sure. Again, okay. Your dad took you climbing, Rob, and I'm guessing this is maybe sometime in the early 60s. You were a young lad. And that kind of old school apprenticeship feels more and more rare now because, yes, most of us start climbing in gyms these days, and
yeah,
we go out. If we go out in groups and we learn things through all kinds of novel ways. So, no judgment there. But, Rob, what did your dad pass on to you? And how did that shape your approach as a climber?
I think my dad passed on judgment to me, how to take in the mountain conditions and how to respond to them. The leader never the leader never falls. That was the key. The other thing he taught me was that you should never hear your feet. Your feet should be silent. I know that coaches say that nowadays to clients in the gym. You should never hear your feet because they're all going bang, bang, bang. But my dad said, way back in the 60s, he said that I don't want to hear your feet. Gentle on your feet. Forget you and climb looking down. Do not climb looking up. So you only look up when your feet are planted, then you look up, look for your handholds, then you look down again. And you move upwards looking down, not up. Things like that. And when I was young, my dad thought it was safer that I lead. So I started leading at about the age of 10 because for me to hold my dad's rope, if my dad fell off, that would be serious. So we reversed roles. And so I started leading really early on, which was great
And
for
and
me.
and I'm guessing those were the years when falling was not an option, right? I
No,
mean, you were placing maybe some gear somewhere, but
yeah,
really, you were planning to never fall when you were
down
out.
climbing. We
Yeah,
down climbed all the
downsizing.
time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Rob, how was it learning climbing from your father? And I asked that because, well, my dad took on the role of my teacher, like, many parents do. And it was kind of scary when he would sit down with us and try and teach us math or other subjects because, yes, I mean, his expectations of me were pretty high. And I was a little afraid of my dad growing up. So, yeah, how was it learning from not just any teacher, but from your father? And yeah, what was that culture of that time like?
It was it they were just days out together. I think my dad liked taking me out because it meant that he could go all the time. So my mother wasn't going to complain if oh, they're going climbing again, but he was taking me out, so it was great. So it was just it was me mate, he was me pal. There was no sort of father son or authoritarian side to it at all. It was just my mate, my buddy. Of course, I totally respected him, and if he lost his temper, he frightened me to death. But it was just they were just great days.
Did your father also help shape your approach of just becoming an adult, of becoming a man? Was that part of the
Yeah,
apprenticeship?
it was it was my mum and dad really. My mum started coming out climbing as well because so we were a family unit. So my mother, because I went out with my dad, my mum wanted to come out as well. And she, from being a city girl, because she was a sort of city girl, she just loved going out in the hills. And yeah, but they always instilled in me that education was everything. And they drove me, if anything, to become successful in terms of my education. And they pushed me on to qualifications in university and everything like that. And that's and I trained then to become a teacher because my dad was a teacher, so
Ah,
maybe that influence from my dad made me become a full-time teacher. So I
for
was only
sure.
ever so after I became a teacher, I was only a weekend warrior because I had a career in teaching. So I wasn't a professional climber by any stretch of the imagination.
Yes, your dad passed on lessons not just in the dark arts of climbing, but
Yeah, that's
also
right.
in just becoming, let's say, a well-rounded human in being able to
Hopefully,
support yourself. Yeah. Um, so now you climb with your son Craig,
yes,
and yeah, you have done a lot of climbing together. I'm guessing some serious climbs as well.
yes.
So, what does that relationship mean to you? Did you mentor your son the same way your dad mentored you?
Craig didn't start climbing till he was about 15 because he was doing other things. Because I believed that he should develop an athletic body. So he did a lot of swimming, he did a lot of cross country running and athletics. And then at the age of 15, he wanted to come out with me. And I was with a group of mates. So Craig sort of gelled into the team that we were called the Barrow lads, because we came from Barrow in Furness. So the Barrow lads, the Barrow boys, we were quite famous around the UK as a climbing group. And he became part of that. So he learnt the trade, not just from me, he learnt the trade from all of my climbing mates. And Craig realised that without strength, you would never get to the highest of the E grades. So when he went away to university, he developed fantastic strength. And I mean fantastic strength. I mean gymnastic strength. He did a lot of training. And he came back into the fold with this power that we'd never seen before. But he wasn't interested in on-sighting. He was interested in head pointing because that was the new way. And so his grades went up, you know, E6, E7, E8, E9, and he repeated all of Dave Burkitt's routes in the Lake District, the hardest E9s that a lot of people haven't done. They've only had 2 ascents, a lot of them. And then he set up his own routes, and he created what's called a route called hard cheese. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
Which again? Sorry?
He created a route called hard cheese in the Lake District.
I'm afraid I'm not. No.
Well, you'll hear about it in the future.
Okay.
Because it's certainly one of the hardest routes in the UK. A lot of the top climbers have tried it and can't do a move on it, but have kept quiet about it.
Craig is not with us right now, but if I was to ask Craig what was going through his mind as he was belaying father on this route, which, forgive me, but which could potentially take his life.
Craig and I have held each other's ropes for many years on a lot of dangerous routes and a lot of hard routes. So we are used to the way that each other climbs. So I've held his ropes on hard climbs, and he was most uncomfortable when he was filming from across the bay on my attempt. And he said, "I'm not doing that again. I'm holding your rope next time." So when I did the actual ascent, he held the rope because he wanted to be connected to me, if you know, as it were. And yeah, you'd have to ask him that question. But I think he had confidence that I had everything in control, as I would if I was holding his rope on a death route.
Sure. Yeah, I'm just wondering what was the communication that took place between you guys as you were taking off? You know, was it like, "Hey, Dad, good luck"?
No, it's you tend not to talk to each other. Just you know, you're in that zone, and when I'm concentrating, he won't talk to me. He'll know when to talk to me.
Sure.
The photographers who were on the climb were brilliant because they never talked to me. They never said anything. I didn't even know they were there. I was left completely alone. And that was important because you don't want to get distracted. You need to be 100% focused on that rock in front of you.
Yep.
Yeah, so from Craig's point of view, I think he was glad he was holding the rope. He was confident in my ability.
Rob, one side question to ask you. You have done a lot of scary routes across the UK, maybe outside. Did you dabble much with free soloing at all?
Yeah, I've done that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And did you free solo at any levels close to, again, like your physical limits?
I've probably the hardest routes I've free soloed are up to about E4 on gritstone. I might have done the odd E5. I've soloed in the Alps, on ice faces in the Alps, back in the 70s. Yeah, but we tended not to brag about it or tell anybody about it. You just did it. Regularly solo up to E1, E grades in the legs. Not so much now.
Sure.
But I could do. I mean, I could. My strength, if you like, is just being keeping my head together. But there's no. I've got no drive to solo anything. If you said, do I want to solo butterballs? No, I don't want to solo butterballs in the States. Thank you
Yes.
very much.
Yeah, I was saying that if okay, so if Butterballs is that finger crack
Yeah,
in Yosemite, I think in
Cookie.
at Cookie Cliff. Yes,
Yeah,
I have climbed that.
brilliant.
I think it's sometime. I think it's somewhere in the mid 11 of Yosemite
Yeah,
grade system, mid 11. Yeah,
yeah.
I don't have the skills, yeah, or the desire to to
No,
attempt to free solo that. Rob,
I
one thing you,
just talking about butterballs.
yes.
I did that with Tobin Sorensen
Oh
and
wow.
Mark Houdon
Oh no way.
back in 1975.
Amazing.
I just thought I'd do a bit of name dropping.
No, no. Hey, I- yeah, fun segue. Any great memories from that trip to Yosemite besides obviously climbing with people like
Oh,
Tobin and Mark?
oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely wonderful. They to sample the life at Camp 4 with the questionable goings on that happened back in the day, of which I can't mention anything, and living an underworld life for 3 months. I was out there was fantastic, and I'll never forget it. And
So
unfortunately, I've never been back since.
yes, this was the 70s. Can you compare and contrast the climbing culture between what you saw in Yosemite and where you came from?
Oh, where I came from, remember, I came from a family background where I had the confines of the family watching over me, and then I'd moved into a professional career. And I taught for 2 years, and then I said, I'm jacking my job in here. So I went to Yosemite. So coming from a professional teaching background, climbing at weekends, going into the Yosemite underworld, as you can imagine, was somewhat different. But I can also tell you that I did take full advantage of it.
I love it. And well, Rob, I guess what happens in the Yosemite underworld
Days in the Yosemite
stays
underworld,
in the
yes.
okay. So I will
Yeah,
not yeah, I
yes.
will not pick your brain too much about it. Uh, Coming back to the present, you had mentioned earlier that back in the day you did not do any training, right?
No.
Yeah. But then at the same time, you were so well prepared for this route. At the beginning of this conversation, you and how great you feel physically. What kind of training did you do for this route and in general to be able to again stay fit and limber and strong over the last few years?
Nothing special. I didn't do anything special for for the bells training. I just when I went to climbing walls, I would just take a long time going up fingery routes. I mean, I wouldn't follow the same colors. I'd change colors just to get that finger intensity that I needed. Because I wasn't going to put a sling on the peg on my garage wall, I chiseled a few holes out on the brickwork to simulate the lock up I was going to need to reach up to lasso the peg and the couple of moves. So I'd put a few, about 3 moves on my garage wall, and I called it the Bell's Crux. How sad's that? And that's because I couldn't get down there a lot of the time because it was raining or blowing a gale or whatever. And I just wanted to keep muscle memory, if you like. But generally, my training's pretty low intensity, but regular. I'm a great believer in 80% training, but regular. If I go to 100%, I need at least 2 or 3 days off. So if I go to failure in any training regime, I'd need 3 days off. And I've noticed a massive difference after the age of 70.
Oh, really?
Yeah, massive difference. You know, certainly 60 to 70 is fine. You just got to be careful. I often say, train your strengths, but caress your weaknesses. You need to address your weaknesses, but very carefully, very, very carefully.
Sure,
Otherwise,
sure.
you'll get injured as you get older, definitely. But you need to keep working at your strengths to keep them on, on top form, because you've climbed all your life on your strengths, so you can't just suddenly dismiss them and focus on your weaknesses, because that don't work.
No, that rings true. Like what they say, you gotta manage your weaknesses and play to your strengths. What does a typical day or maybe a typical week of your life look like when it comes to finding time to focus on climbing training, but overall being able to keep yourself again limber and healthy? Because like you said, yes, you get to a certain point in your life when one needs to put in focused efforts towards keeping like all the moving parts in check
Yeah,
and
yeah.
being able to make sure that you stay ahead of the curve there. So yeah, what have you learned and applied in being able to stay in good shape, Rob?
I think I'm going to talk about grasping opportunities when things don't go right, because every setback, of course, is an opportunity. And in 2017, I broke my finger climbing, and I was climbing probably about 7C at 67. I was really, going well, and I broke my finger. And it's the first climbing accident I'd had, and I fell off and I smashed my finger. So I was out the game. So what I did was I got a watt bike. Have you heard of a watt bike? I hired one
No,
in.
I have not.
Well,
No.
it's a training bike, and you put it on the floor, and you can train on it for. I decided I was going to go cycle racing instead of climbing. So from 2014 it was to 2018, I didn't climb hardly. I went to cycle racing and I trained for it from scratch because I'd never been on a bike hardly in my life. And I just focused on that. And for heart-lung exercise, that is fantastic, cycle training. And learning about how to race, road races around the country. I did 25 road races around the country. I was totally, typical of me, 100% at it. And I think that set my body up to move into the 70s really well.
Oh, wow.
That heart-lung exercise away from climbing. I was still doing some training for climbing because cycling weakens your arms badly. But cycle training, I take my hat off to those guys who do that. They are fantastic athletes. Brilliant. But that's the only time I've ever, sorry to go on, that's the only time I've ever trained 100% with a professional trainer and a professional program. And from not being anywhere with races, I started winning races because of that training that I got.
Oh wow.
So even at the age of late 60s, if you train under a coach, you can develop massive amounts of power.
Amazing.
But I haven't taken that back to climbing, though.
Sure. Yeah, you picked up, or at some point you decided that cycling was going to be this new sport that you're going to put your
Yeah,
focus on.
I had no choice.
Yeah,
Me bad finger injury, bad break, smashed
for sure.
me finger.
Oh wow. Okay. So you picked up cycling. It caught your fancy, and then you said something else earlier that yes, you just committed completely,
Yeah,
and to the point that you've hired a coach and a trainer. Did that make a big difference, Rob? Because most of us are like, you know, self-coached climbers or self-coached amateur athletes. Did getting a professional really sort things out for you?
massive,
What did you
totally
learn?
massive.
What
Well, because I was totally new to the sport. I knew nothing about it. I didn't have a background in it. I didn't have any ideas. I was just like a youngster going to a gym nowadays, I suppose, with climbing. I was completely at sea. And it was like doing homework for teacher when you're training. You do your training, you get a report back on your training, you're given your next training session and so on, and it goes like that. It was really constructed in a professional way, and it paid massive dividends. I mean, from nowhere, I never talk about climbing like this, but from nowhere, I won a national series, after 3 years cycling. So
wow.
from nowhere. So yeah. So it does work. It does work. But I'm saying I think that's helped my climbing into my 70s because I think it's helped my body.
Do you feel, Rob? Do you feel you're a natural athlete,
No.
or do you feel its application? What's the secret to your success?
I think it's grit and determination in a way. I think you set your mind to something. Because without determination, you've got nothing. And it's that drive to get off your backside when you can't be bothered. And that drive to sort of you just languish there in your chair and you're watching a soap on television. And it's, and a lot of climbers of my age have gone to what I call the dark side. They've gone to sport climbing because it's so much easier, so much more enjoyable. You go with your mates, and you go to Greece and you go to Spain and it's lovely and sunny. And yeah, I mean, I've done that as well, but I haven't forgotten my trad.
You go off with your mates to Greece and
Yeah.
Spain.
Yeah, which is great. But I haven't forgotten my trad climbing, and a lot of them have. And they feel when I talk to them, I mean, better climbers than me, I might add. I say to them, why you do not trad anymore? I haven't got it's gone. I haven't got it. And it's too much hassle. I can't be bothered with it. It's too much gear. And this is a lot easier and more enjoyable. And you can have a few beers afterwards and, yeah. But yeah, I mean, I go to Klimnos every year. It's great.
It sounds like you are very strategic there. Like one doesn't have to choose. One can do both.
They can, yeah, you can. And when I'm outside in the mountains, I I feel $1 million because I'm sort of a lord of the manor feeling.
Yeah.
I go into an indoor climbing wall and it's really great because I'm shit. I am the bottom of the pile in a climbing wall, this old bloke, who can hardly do a V5, or a V6 or whatever the grades they are now. It's humbling. It's humbling. And these guys in the indoor climbing walls, I mean, if they're committed to going outside, well, it'd be great.
Well, the cliffs would be that much more crowded. Saying very, very selfishly.
Yes.
Rob, just maybe spending another second on your physical abilities. You picked up cycling, and sounds like it had these bonus benefits that have
Yeah.
helped you with your fitness now.
Yes.
Anything else outside of climbing and cycling that you do to stay healthy? Do you have a regimen with, I don't know, with stretching, with lifting weights? Are there other things that you're doing?
Every morning I stretch for half an hour, gentle stretching, just gentle stretching. And when I played squash, I was a coach when I played squash, so warming up was very important. So I start at the top of my head and work down to my feet because it's easy, you can remember it. And I finish off with deep squats. I find the deep squats have sorted out my knee problems that I was beginning to develop in my 60s. You couldn't do rockovers. You couldn't get down on your haunches. And it's the warning signs are when you can't get your foot in your underpants in the morning. you know, you, your back's stiff, and
Yes,
just it's not every other day, it's every day. Every day you should stretch, in my opinion. I've done some videos on my YouTube channel on weight training and stuff for the aging athlete. So you could direct listeners to that if you wanted to, rather than me explain it here. They could see what I do. Simple stuff. I don't do pull-ups. Pull-ups are a no-no.
oh,
Absolutely a no-no, because you will get injured. Too much strain, brachialis, shoulders. So I just do rows, with your feet at 45, so you have 45-degree angle, and just put, right high pulls on the rows. Far better
right.
for you than pull-ups. So, and I do weighted lifts, weighted pinch grip lifts.
Sure.
Fantastic. Really good for the forearms and fingers. Pinch grip, wide pinches, or narrow, but sort of wide pinches. And instead of hanging, which can be bad for your shoulders as you get older, I'll only hang at 85% of body weight.
Sure.
So I'll have my feet on, say, step ladders, like you're climbing a big overhang. So you've got, say, 80% of your weight on your fingers.
Yes.
I train half crimp.
Any lessons you have learned the hard way about physical training? Maybe things that you stopped doing because maybe the pull-ups were one example.
Yeah.
Maybe some other lessons you've had on, again, being able to kind of keep that body strong.
Yeah. I'm a very good friend of a climber called Neil Gresham. who is a very experienced trainer. He's a very good climber as well.
Yes,
And
he is.
so we share ideas a lot. And I've learned quite a lot of training from him. So he's told me the importance of antagonists. So I do some antagonist training as well. But I don't do anything over the top. I just tick along. They say listen to your body.
Sure.
But unfortunately, when you get over 70, your body stops talking to you. And what happens
Yeah, what does that
is,
mean? I've heard you say that before.
yeah, it means that injuries come from nowhere. You don't hear them coming.
Wow.
Nothing in your body is telling you that this is going to come. So all of a sudden, something can hit. Could be it could be your back, it could be your knee or something. And fortunately, nothing's major happened, but lots of little niggles suddenly arrive and you don't know where they arrived from. You know, you don't deserve it. You haven't done anything wrong to get that. And it's come.
No, Rob, I can totally empathize, which is funny. I mean, I just turned 47 and I'm already feeling that.
Yeah.
I'm feeling the fragility of the human body.
Get out. Get out. You're at your
I
peak.
know, right? Sorry?
You're at your peak, you know.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. I mean,
I know.
I joke with Dave Burkitt. I don't know if you've heard of Dave Burkitt, but he was a very high standard climber.
I have, yes.
And I said, you must feel really depressed there because you've peaked and you're on your way down because you climbed at such a high standard when you were young. And I said, I climbed at such a low standard when I was young. I haven't peaked yet, so I feel great. And in fact, I've just peaked on the bells, haven't I?
Rob, one thing also I love about your story is that you picked up these activities, you know, in the last couple decades, which seem to have brought you joy. You talked about other sports you have picked up. You talked about cycling that you took to a high level. For people listening who kind of feel that the narrative we have is you get older and you stop doing things, you flip that. So, do you have anything to say to people on why they should continue exploring?
To me, it's like, what do you feel like when you don't do anything? What do you feel like when you just allow yourself to languish and sit there and oh, I haven't climbed for ages, and you do nothing about it? So what do you feel like? And basically, you feel bad about it. So do something about it so you don't feel bad about it, because feeling bad about not doing something and feeling frustrated about not doing something is the worst feeling in the world. So that's what drives me to get out there and do things. And I think it's important to have a goal. You've got to have a goal. And in climbing terms, it's usually something that's a little bit harder than you think you can do, just to drive you on, or a climb that you've never done and you want to do it, you know? You want to do butterballs, you've never done it all your life, you know, but you think, oh, it's a couple of grades harder. Well, why not work on that? Give yourself an horizon to go at. And that to me is the most important thing. So people have said to me now, what's next? And it won't be long before I've got a what next.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to cope with how the media, the climbing media, in the small world that we live in within climbing, but it's gone a bit mad on this.
Yeah.
and I can't understand it. People explain it to me why it is a big deal, but I find it. I've only head pointed a route, for God's sake. You know.
But no, for sure. But Rob, of course, I mean, there are not that many people. Again, not to talk about age too much, but there are not that many people in their 70s climbing the kind of routes that you are climbing now. I think that's what makes people sit up.
Yeah, only because the sport climbing. There's not many of my generation that are trad climbing.
Exactly, Rob. That's the point. Like, you are.
I mean, there's people like Dougie Hall. Have you heard of Dougie Hall? He's about 70 now, and for his 70th birthday, he did 70 points. Top roping, but the volume there is amazing, isn't it? 70 points on your 70th birthday.
That's amazing.
And there's some of the top climbers, Ron Fawcett, he told me he's not interested in doing trad anymore, but he's still a brilliant climber. John Long will be a brilliant climber still, won't he? He'll be about my age as well. But everybody to their own, I suppose I'm a bit unusual, really. It's just that I'm no good at sport climbing.
Sure. Rob, a couple of final questions before we round it off. I like to ask everybody this question: what does being ageless mean to you?
Ageless. It means that age isn't an issue. You shouldn't let it be an issue. All too often, it mentally becomes an issue, and there's no excuse for that. There is an excuse if you physically can't do anything anymore, but I don't think there's an excuse for mentally allowing yourself not to do it if you can physically do it.
Strong words. Rob, what is one thing outside of sports that you're so fond of, outside of sports, that gives you profound joy?
Outside of sport?
Yes.
That's quite a difficult question. Because everything I value in life relates to some sort of achievement. It need not necessarily be in sport. People ask me, have I got any heroes? Well, the heroes for me are the people that get out their comfort zone. And there's millions of heroes out there. I don't think everybody pats themselves on the back enough, because if you get out your comfort zone, it's an achievement in life on its own. So that's beyond sport, but obviously it's an integral part of sport as well. I don't know if that answers the question, but
it does not answer the question, but I still love what you said.
That's I mean, can you ask me the question again?
Okay, let me try a different way. What might be just a simple thing in your daily life that you enjoy doing?
I love walking the dog in the morning on the beach.
Okay.
Where I can clear my head, think about things. Yeah, I think it's important to find your soul in a daily routine if you can. Reflection. I've never been one for meditation or anything like that, but I think it doesn't have to be as extreme as that, if that is indeed extreme.
Rob, sorry, I have to butt in, but somebody who just climbed one of the most extreme routes out there, with death potential, is calling the act of sitting down and focusing on one's thoughts extreme. Love it. Love it.
Right, yeah. Yeah. So yeah, life's an interesting journey, isn't it?
Yes. Rob, what might have been the greatest gift somebody ever gave you?
A material gift or emotional gift.
You pick.
I think my parents instilled in me the value of empathy. And sometimes I think too much about what other people think and how other people feel than perhaps I should. But that empathy to me is one of the greatest values that my parents gave me, that I should always think about. And that doesn't come from a religious base at all. That is just a human base. Respect other people. If you want people to respect you, you respect other people. And one of the great things in life is trying to generate respect from others. Because if you can get respect from others, it's one of the greatest feelings that you can have.
Yes, insightful. Yes, wise and deep reaching lesson. On the flip side, what might have been the greatest gift you gave somebody?
Always strive to fulfill your potential. Always strive to fulfill your potential. The world's full of talented people who don't achieve because they've got no drive. And that it requires an inner strength. And I think if I could pass on an inner strength to everybody, to believe in your inner strength, because everybody's got it, it's in there somewhere, but too many people fail to use it.
Sure. So now, is this like a message you're passing on, or is this I guess this message is a gift you want to pass on?
Yeah, yeah. Yes, it's a message because I talking to people, I feel that there's a lot of frustration out there, and you shouldn't allow that to develop because it can become unhealthy to the individual. And there's nothing worse than the big if only, is there? If only I'd done this, or if only I'd done that. Well, actually, mate, go and do it.
Yeah, I think that is a wise lesson to take forward, which is leave no room for ifs.
Yes, yeah,
in one's life.
I mean, there's people, a lot more educated than I am that have probably written books on this, but it's true. And I feel for the people who become, as they've got older, they've become injured or become ill, and they can no longer do what they want to do. And I feel for those people because there's nothing they can do about it. And that's tragic, and that's heartbreaking. But for the majority of us, we can do something about it.
Yes. And for the rest of us who still have our physical faculties somewhat intact, I think we We owe it to ourselves and to be able to at least attempt to reach our potential.
Yes.
Rob, final question, fun one. At the beginning, we talked about your breakfast, but what might be one meal you could eat every day?
Fresh salmon with a cheese sauce, new potatoes, Guernsey potatoes, of course, and some nice soft runner beans.
That sounds delicious, which reminds me that it is time for my lunch.
Lunch, right? It's nearly tea time here.
Yes, yes. And
Yeah,
I should also
yeah.
let you go to your next appointment or adventure for the day.
I'm going to ask you a question now.
Oh, please.
What's what's your what's your challenge to get yourself out of the comfort zone in climbing terms?
What's my challenge to get myself out of the comfort zone? I think it is to. So my comfort zone is essentially doing the Kalymnos Greece type of climbing,
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
and the challenge I have is to be able to get past some nagging physical injuries I have, bad shoulders, to be able to figure out ways to build more power, be
Yeah.
able to do more powerful things, more dynamic things.
So have you got a route in mind that you want to do?
I do not have a specific route in mind.
Okay, so your challenge now is find that specific route you want to do, but otherwise you'll just languish. Because unless you've got something that you want to do, you'll say, "Oh, I want to sort my shoulder out. I want to do this." So, you know, you need something at the end of the tunnel to drive you there. I'm
Yes,
not saying you
yes.
should do the bells. I'm not saying you should do
Yeah.
the bells. No, no. But there will be some maybe 7C sport route that you want to do.
Yeah, I do have a goal like that. I mean, the thing with sport climbing is individual routes are not always as iconic as what is present in the traditional climbing world, because I think in the track climbing world, I mean, sure, I mean, I'm generalizing deeply here.
Yeah, there are
In the
iconic sports routes,
Yeah,
though,
in the
aren't there?
track climbing world, you go after specific route objectives. In
Yeah.
the sport climbing world, for sure, you go after certain grades. So yes, I do have a goal, which is to get back to climbing in the eights. Actually, I've never done an eight. So my hardest sport climbing grades, which was like, I don't know, 12 years ago, was a 7C plus.
You've
Yeah,
done a 7C plus, and you've never done the 8A. So
yes,
choose the right 8A that isn't going to damage your shoulder.
that's good advice. Yes. Yes,
You
I
know,
need to be a little strategic and find
yeah,
the right
strategic,
type of route.
definitely
Yes,
strategic. Yeah, I found
yes,
that as you get older, you want to climb the harder grade, you've got to be strategic. Right.
100%, 100%. No,
Ah,
I think you underscore something which is important, I think, and maybe which goes beyond the world of climbing, which is the importance of having goals. Because
yeah,
if you just set like if you just have some person, let's say, random example, who's trying to lose weight, and I
yeah.
think just telling that person to lose weight doesn't always work, because maybe the idea and the thing just seems kind of arbitrary. But then if you tell that person to get inspired by the idea of running, let's say a half marathon or some other like kind of goal, I think
Yeah,
I think that tangibility allows people to
yeah, absolutely.
be motivated. So your advice is on point, not just to me, but for people listening, is to find a goal and then kind of work backwards from that goal.
Yeah, and a strategic goal, the older you get, the more strategic you have to
Yeah,
be.
yeah. Rob, it's been
Great stuff.
a gift to have you on the show. Thank you so much for making the time.
Okay, mate. If we shake, I can't shake your hand, but I mean, I would shake your hand if you were there. All right, mate. A pleasure.
That's it, folks. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Ageless Athlete podcast. I hope you enjoyed this show just as much as I enjoyed creating and producing it. Whether you are an athlete looking to push your limits or someone striving to maintain a healthy, active lifestyle as you age, there is always something new to learn. From Ageless Athlete, we bring you a fresh episode each and every week. If you liked what you heard, we would love it if you would take a moment to subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an update. And if you really liked what you heard, please leave us a review, crush those 5 stars on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever else you listen to your podcasts. It helps us reach more people who are passionate about staying strong and resilient, no matter their age. Don't forget to visit our website and leave your email so I can send you occasional insights, stories, and tips to keep you inspired and motivated on your journey. You can also follow us on Instagram at Ageless Athlete Podcast and on YouTube at Ageless Athlete Podcast as well for even more great content. All of these links are available on the show notes for this episode. This show is entirely produced by me, Kush Khandelwal, based out of California with the help of my trusted adventure pup Roger. Until next time, keep challenging yourself. Keep pushing those limits. Stay mentally and physically fit. Continue doing what you love to do. And my friends, stay ageless. Friends, this is not an ad. This is just a quick message to those amongst us who are listening to Ageless Athlete podcast for the first time. I would love it if you would hit subscribe and follow on your favorite podcast app, whether it's Apple Podcasts or Spotify or Stitcher or Overcast or what have you. We bring you stories and routines and other inspiration from elites in the world of the best outdoor sports. In each episode, you will find how these athletes stay connected to the outdoors, maintain peak performance, and continue to thrive as they age. I encourage you to look through Brad episodes and listen to a couple and see if they resonate. And then, come back next week. We release an episode each week. And I am really inspired to bring you some of the best stories from the world of the outdoors. Okay, back to the show.